So it's been a wonderful evening so far, and now really an opportunity, I think, to hear from some really wonderful BU people. So I'm going to call on Dr. Aram Trebanian and ask him to introduce our keynote speaker. Aram.
Thank you, Peter. Carl, Myrna, members of the Franzblau family, friends. This has been a double privilege for me tonight in that earlier in the day I had the opportunity to talk about Carl in a different way. Carl, as you know, has been an old friend and colleague. There were some stories from this afternoon that I didn't have a chance to tell, but Peter told me that I shouldn't do it now, and Jane Ahern earlier told me that I should save it to have hanging over Carl's head over in the future. My second privilege, of course, is to introduce our main speaker this evening, Louis Sullivan. Lou was a medical student when I was a research fellow in the Department of Medicine. And we actually had some interactions at that time. While we were at the table this evening, Lou brought up a point that made me remember that he always was an enterprising medical student and has continued to be that way. He told me about a bet that he won with Franz Engelfinger about the pH detection of a certain reagent, and he won a 50-cent bet, which at that time was a lot of money. Well, I can tell you another story about his enterprising nature. Lou had a way of earning money while he was a medical student, and he volunteered for experiments. And aldosterone is a hormone made by the adrenal gland that was discovered right around the time that Lou was a medical student. And there was an article that aldosterone was associated with hypertension and that it might cause salt and water retention in the kidney. So there were two groups that had an interest in this. One was the group I was working with as a research fellow, Bill Hollander, Bob Wilkins, myself. The second group was Arnold Relman, who was head of the kidney group at that time, and he became suddenly interested in how aldosterone affected the kidney retention of salt and water. So we were separately, but in a way together, planning experiments to look at aldosterone. And I had one protocol. Relman's group, Norm Levinsky was in that group. They had another protocol. And Lou decided to volunteer for both protocols. But he only got injections once a day of the hormone, and I was collecting certain parts of his body fluids, and the Relman people were collecting other parts. It turned out that both groups had papers that were published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation, so I'm very thankful. That was the first paper that I had ever published in the JCI. And Lou is listed as LS male 24. But following graduation from Boston University School of Medicine, with honors, I should say, he went on, trained in internal medicine and hematology, and then took a faculty appointment at Seton Hall. But soon thereafter, we recruited him to Boston University, where he stayed for 9 years as co-head of the hematology-oncology section. He was a colleague of mine at Boston City Hospital, and Franz Engelfinger was our original chief, and then Norm Levinsky followed him after that. But Lou has had a very distinguished career in medicine, needless to say. He left Boston University, where he, by the way, established our first sickle center, getting one of the major national sickle cell grants at the time. Went on to become head at Morehouse, dean at Morehouse College, which 3 years later became Morehouse School of Medicine. He was the founding dean there, and he built Morehouse into a wonderful institution. He was able to recruit good faculty. The class size increased for something like 16, I think, or 12, to a full class size now. And he did so well that Presidents George H.W. Bush asked him to become Secretary of Health and Human Services in 1989. He stayed in that position until he went back to Morehouse as president of the university, and stayed in that role until 2002. He allegedly retired at that time, but as he has said in one of his writings, he failed retirement. And he has done many things since then. He has been and is now president of the National Museum of Health, which I found out tonight is going to be in Atlanta. Lou is in the middle of the process of raising money for what I think will be a wonderful museum. He heads the Sullivan Alliance, which is to recruit more people from racial and ethnic backgrounds into healthcare careers. That's funded by a large grant from the Kellogg Foundation. He's been on many boards. Currently he's on the board of Grady Hospital, private corporations as well. He's gotten many, many honors. I could list them for a long time, but among those honors, he received an honorary degree from Boston University, and one of our special societies, one's named after Chester Kiefer, one Franz Engelfinger, but one of the 6 societies, I think it is, Karen, one of the 6 societies is the Louis Sullivan Society, and we were very pleased to be able to honor him in that way. So Lou, an old friend, a colleague, a great man in medicine, we welcome you. Please join me in welcoming our graduate of the school, friend and alum, Louis Sullivan.
Joe, thank you. Thank you very much for those generous remarks. It's always a great pleasure to come to Boston University, to renew friendships and to make new friends. And certainly for me, this is a special occasion to come to help honor our friend and colleague, Carl Franzblau. As I thought about what I would say this evening, first of all, I want you to know that I decided to title my remarks, The Fierce, Fuzzy Wuzzy Fireball. And I'll explain how I came to that title a little later on. Because I came back on the faculty, as you've heard, here at Boston University in 1966. And Carl had joined the faculty a few years before then, and so we developed a relationship that lasted not only till the time that I left to go back to Atlanta, my home, but also a relationship that has continued to the present time. So I have great affection and respect for Carl, as all of you do, because of not only what he means and what he has meant to Boston University, but what he has meant for the biomedical sciences around the country, for all of the things that in which he has been involved. Also was reflecting on what is it about Carl that has made him so special. And I think it boils down to the fact that he really is a leader. And let me tell you what I've thought about and learned from others over the years about the qualities that make a good leader, because I think Carl has these qualities in abundance. First, leaders have great vision. They have the ability to see a new reality. They can dream of a better tomorrow. They work to find the solution to a problem. Secondly, leaders have courage. They have the courage to work to make their vision come true. And that means being able to work in spite of skepticism, even ridicule and criticism from others. Thirdly, leaders have the ability to focus their efforts, to be clear about their goals, and not to be distracted. The fourth quality of leadership that Carl has is determination, because leaders are not deterred by roadblocks or setbacks. They work to find a way around them. Fifth, leaders have persistence, the ability to continue against great resistance in the environment. A sixth quality of leadership is honesty or integrity. Leaders' words are their bond. They say what they think, and they develop the trust of those around them by their honesty and their integrity. The seventh quality is the ability to build teams, because great goals require collaboration. They require the ability to sell your ideas to others, the ability to recognize also in others' talents, and the ability to utilize the talents of others towards a common goal. An eighth quality of leadership is a commitment to excellence. Leaders give great thought and preparation before they embark on an undertaking. They get all the information they can, they plan well, and then they execute. But they do not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Leaders know when it is time to decide and to act, and not to be paralyzed by indecision. A ninth quality is the ability to communicate with others, the ability to explain your vision and its compelling logic. A 10th quality is the ability to motivate others, to inspire others to follow your lead. Leaders also have the ability to listen to others, to understand and to respect the opinion of others, and to accept good ideas, or to indeed, when ideas are not so good, to yet respect them, but yet understand why an alternative is better. And finally, leaders have flexibility. They have the ability to modify their concept or their ideas or their plans and to make changes when required. Now, every one of these things that I have listed, I think you will agree with me, our friend Carl has in great abundance. I want to share with you a couple of incidents where Carl and I interacted that some of you may be aware of, but others I'm sure are not. But I think you will see where this fits in to the character of our colleague whom we honor this evening. Because Carl has shown himself to be a leader in so many ways, as you've already heard. Chairman of Biochemistry, Associate Dean for Graduate Biomedical Sciences, Executive Director of City Lab, Director of the Division of Dental Research in the School of Graduate Dentistry, as well as serving as acting provost for a half year in 1987. All of these things he's been able to do while keeping steady on his course. Well, I came back to join the faculty of BU in July of 1966. I'd graduated in 1958 and had entered BU as a student in 1954. At the time that I entered BU, there were 3 black students in the entire school. I was the black student in my class. Although there was this ratio, I always felt very welcome, very comfortable, and interacted greatly with my fellow students and faculty. But when I came back in 1966, 2 years later, you recall in April of '68, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And around the country, and certainly at BU Medical School, we looked around the institution and we really went through an examination of where we were as an institution in addressing the ideals of equality and equal opportunity, et cetera. And while I had a tremendously positive experience during my student years, it was striking that some 14 years after I had entered in '54, there were only 7 black students in the school at that time. So several of us talked about this. Well, what can we do as an institution to really help further the ideals that Dr. Martin Luther King stood for? And as you know, King had his theology degree that he received from BU in 1955 before he went to Montgomery and then became famous with his leadership of the Southern Christian Leadership Council. Well, Frank Ebaugh was the dean of the medical school at that time, and because he was a hematologist, I had known him at Dartmouth, where he was chief of hematology before coming to BU. And several of us talked about what we really ought to do to try and have a more integrated and diverse student body here in the medical school. And we decided that we ought to organize a program to invite black students from colleges in the South to come and spend a weekend at Boston University in an effort to enhance our recruitment efforts for black students. And Carl was among, there were about 10 of us faculty at the time who worked on this. F. Friedman, who was chief of ophthalmology, subsequently became dean, was one of them, and several others. And Carl was among that group. Of course, I spoke with Dean Ebaugh about the time, said, now, you know, to do this, our idea is that we'd like to invite perhaps 20 or 25 students, one from one from a college, so we would have perhaps 25 colleges represented at this weekend. And of course, Frank Ebaugh thought this was a great idea, but he said, Lou, you know, I don't have any money. He says, but I'll support you in whatever way I can. So what we did, well, we said, well, do you have any objection if we were to go around Boston to see if we could raise the money? He had none, and indeed supported us in that effort. So to make a long story short, Thanksgiving weekend in 1968, we had 24 black students here in Boston for the long weekend. But what it also developed was this. We had gotten such an enthusiastic response from the colleges to whom we wrote that we decided, well, you know, this looks like this might turn out to be a very significant thing, and do we have the capacity, let's say if we develop a lot of interest, do we at BU have the capacity for handling such a potential influx of students? So we opened this up. So we ended up with Harvard, Tufts, Dartmouth, University of Vermont, Brown University, and UMass, all of the medical schools in New England except for University of Connecticut, because Connecticut had a rule that they only admitted state students. Now UMass had the same rule, but Lamar Suda was the dean at UMass at that time, and Lamar Suda, you recall, had been the dean when I graduated from BU in 1958. So he said that we are restricted by the legislature to admitting only Massachusetts residents, but we'd be happy to participate because if there are such students who are Massachusetts residents, we would welcome having them here. So we had all of these schools represented. We had counseling sessions where each school had its team of people in rooms around the medical school's campus, telling them about things at Tufts or at BU or at Vermont, et cetera. And we had social events for the students too, because we wanted to show them the real attractions of Boston, because most of these students we knew had never been to Boston before. Well, Carl was right in the middle of all of this, helping in the planning and the execution of this weekend. As a result of this, September of 1969, these medical schools all had, except for Vermont, and that was a special situation, but all of these medical schools had a tremendous increase in their black student enrollment. Harvard, which the previous year had, I believe, 1 or 2 black students, had 7 in their incoming class in 1969. At BU, we had, it was either 5 or 6. We were a little ticked off that Harvard had outdid us. But all of these schools really, we had a great time. And I remember from Vermont, Larry McCrory, chairman of physiology, came down, African-American there, and he tried very hard to interest the students in Vermont. So they were really there pitching. But somehow these students from places like New Orleans and Tallahassee and Miami really didn't know the difference between Burlington, Vermont, and the North Pole. So Vermont really had a very big obstacle that they were not able to overcome. But that was quite an event. So Carl, in those years, was very active, working as a full-time member of our faculty group to increase the diversity of the student body here at Boston University and the other medical schools here in New England. I remember, for example, Perry Culver came over from Harvard. And those of you who are my age or maybe a few years younger may remember that the laboratory syllabus for clinical medicine, he was the author of that. So we had serious participation by all of the schools who were involved. So that was one thing that Carl really, at that time, showed his interest in having a diverse student body here at BU. Another interaction is the fact that being a member of the Advisory Council for the National Center for Research in Minority Health and Health Disparities, we wanted to, indeed, I was a member of the council, and John Ruffin, who is the head of that center, I had created the Office for Research in Minority Health in 1990 during my years as secretary. This had been elevated to a center. And so we had an advisory council, and we wanted to really have strong representation of strong scientists who had a genuine interest in increasing diversity in the sciences on the council. And so I spoke with John Ruffin, who had asked for my advice on people that we could recruit. And so I told him about Carl Franzblau. And so he said, gee, he sounds perfect, but would you be willing to sound him out? Would he be receptive to an invitation to serve on the council? So I called Carl and told him about it, and of course he said he would. And so then he and John Ruffin had a discussion, and he came on the council, and he worked very hard for 4 years as a member of the council. But Carl also wanted to be sure that this wasn't just a setup, because as we worked at the council for these programs to increase diversity in the sciences, biomedical scientists, as well as supporting the development of science programs at minority institutions, we talked about this, and Carl pulled me aside now and said, Lou, now, I want to be sure now, this isn't just something for African Americans, because we have a lot of other minorities, and so I don't want to be a part of something that's just really setting up some quotas, et cetera. So I said, oh, no. We're going to really, we're interested in Hispanic Americans and Native Americans and so forth. And indeed, we had other members of the council representing those groups. And Carl made sure that we were honest in our deliberations in developing these programs and recommending allocations of the budget for those programs as well. So it was as a member of that council that we enjoyed working with Carl to increase the diversity of our nation's biomedical science corps, as well as programs to address health disparities that are increasingly recognized as playing a major role, a significant role in the fact that our country, in spite of all the dollars we spend, we really fall far down the ladder in the health of our population. And a significant part of that is really the fact that we have a growing minority population. 1/3 of our citizens today, either African American, Hispanic American, or Native American, and that, as you know, by the year 2040, there will no longer be a white majority population. And of course, I emphasize the fact that this is a continuation of the way this country was formed from the beginning. We are a country of immigrants. The immigrants were initially from Europe, but now they're coming from all over the world, and certainly from the southern hemisphere quite a bit. And if we are to build on the principles and the value system that we have created here in America, we want to be sure that we give all of our citizens the tools that they need so they can become productive members of society, adding to society in a very positive way so that life is enriched for all of us. And so I know through the City Lab program is another example of Carl's efforts in those ways. And so now you can see why I thought about the title of the fierce, fuzzy, wuzzy fireball, because Carl is someone who has high standards. He's uncompromising with those standards, but at the core of those very high standards is a very warm person of great empathy, of great concern. He gives of himself entirely to see that others have their full opportunity to develop into great scientists, great citizens. And Carl, for all of those things that you have done and will continue to do, we salute you. And indeed, I asked Carl during the reception what he planned to do, and of course I got the answer that I knew I would get, because I think Carl and I have a similar spirit there, that he has a whole list of things that he intends to do. So I know that we will benefit from his ideas, from his energy, from his leadership for years to come. So Carl, this is a transition, but we know that we will continue to enjoy your presence and your contributions. So congratulations. We all love you. Thank you.